She warned her husband never to call her name after midnight, no matter what he heard. He thought she was joking, until two of her answered. This is the story of the broken rule. Once upon a time, in a quiet village where the nights were so dark you could hear the moonlight resting on rooftops, there lived a young man named Izzy. Izzy was not the richest man in the village, but he was the kind of man people trusted. If a goat went missing, Izzy would help you search. If a child fell sick, Izzy would run to fetch herbs without complaining. He had broad shoulders from farming and hunting, and he had soft eyes that made elders say, "This one has a calm spirit." His hut sat near the edge of the village, not far from the bush path where crickets sang like tiny drummers, and the wind moved through tall grass like a whispering crowd. Izzy had married Chidera, and people said the day she entered his home, his hut began to feel like a place where peace could sit down and rest. One day, Chidera was the kind of woman who didn't talk too loudly in public, but when she spoke, her words landed like palm oil, smooth, deep, and impossible to ignore. Her skin was warm and rich like sun-baked clay after rain. Her eyes were steady, the kind that could look at you and make you remember your mother's advice. She wore her hair in neat braids that fell behind her shoulders, and when she walked, her wrapper moved with her like it understood her steps. She sold vegetables in the market sometimes, not because Eze couldn't provide, but because she liked being among people, listening to stories and laughter, and bringing small gifts home: roasted groundnuts, a pinch of spice, a new clay cup. She was gentle with children and respectful to elders, but there was something about her that made gossipers lower their voice. It wasn't fear. It was the quiet feeling that Chidera knew things you didn't. The first time Chidera told Eze her rule, it was not in the village square where everyone could hear and laugh. It was inside their hut, under the soft glow of an oil lamp. The rain had just fallen that evening, and the air smelled of wet earth and smoke from distant cooking fires. Eze had come in tired, his feet dusty, his hands smelling of farm work. Chidera served him hot soup and pounded yam, and they ate in comfort, listening to crickets and the faint sound of a drum far away, the kind of drum a youth might beat just to prove he could keep rhythm. When they finished eating, Chidera washed their bowls, then sat beside him on the raffia mat. She didn't smile the way she normally smiled. She looked at him as if she was looking past his face and into something deeper. "Izzy," she said softly, "I need you to promise me something." Izzy laughed, because to him, promises were easy when love was strong. "Is it that I should stop eating too much?" he joked, rubbing his stomach. Chidera didn't laugh. She took his hand, pressed her thumb lightly into his palm, and spoke like a woman placing a pot on fire and watching it carefully. "Never call my name after midnight, not as a joke, not as a test, not because your friends dared you, not even if you hear my voice calling you first. After midnight, the night becomes a road that spirits also walk. If you call my name, something else can answer. And if it answers, you must not follow. Do you hear me?" Eze frowned and leaned forward, like someone trying to see clearly in the dark. "Chidera," he said, lowering his voice, "what are you saying? Is this a story from your mother?" Chidera's eyes did not move. "It is not a story for entertainment," she replied. "It is a rule that keeps the door of our home closed." Eze wanted to laugh again, to shake off the heaviness that suddenly sat in the room, but something in Chidera's face made his laughter die in his throat. The lamp crackled softly. Outside, a night bird cried once, then went quiet. Eze swallowed. "All right," he said, squeezing her fingers. "I promise." Chidera finally breathed out, like someone who had been holding her breath for too long. She nodded once. "Good," she said. "If you keep this rule, our home will be safe." Eze did not understand why his wife spoke like that, but he loved her. And love makes a man agree even when his mind is still confused. For many months, life moved like a calm river. Eze worked on his farm, hunted when needed, and returned home to Chidera's steady warmth. Sometimes they sat outside at night with a small fire and shared stories. Chidera would point at the sky and say, "That star is stubborn," and Eze would laugh and say, "It is just like your village aunties." They would tease each other, then fall silent and listen to the bush singing its songs. Their neighbors began to notice something. Eze used to be easily angry when young men mocked him in the square. Before Chidera, he would answer every insult with a sharper insult. But now, he was calmer. He walked like a man who had nothing to prove. That calmness irritated one person. His best friend was a man named Uche. Uche had grown up with Eze. They had wrestled as boys, chased goats, stolen mangoes, and run from angry elders. Uche was the kind of friend who could make you laugh even when your stomach was empty. But Uche also had a restless spirit, and his laughter often carried a hidden thorn. He was not poor, but he always felt poor when he compared himself to others. He was not ugly, but he always felt overlooked. And when Eze married Chidera, Uche began to look at Eze the way hungry eyes look at a pot on fire. At first, it was small comments. At the palm wine joint, while men sat on wooden stools and talked about harvest, hunting, and village matters, Uche would lean back and say, "Eze, you are lucky. Oh. Some men marry wives who talk too much. Your own wife is quiet like a queen." People would nod and laugh, and Eze would smile politely. But then, Uche started adding extra words that sounded like jokes but carried suspicion. "But Chidera is too composed," he would say, shaking his head as if he was thinking deeply. "No woman is that composed unless she is hiding something." Eze would frown and wave it away. "Uche, leave this talk," he would say. "Chidera is my wife." Uche would lift his hands like an innocent man. "I'm just saying," he would reply, and the other men would laugh because laughter is easy when it is not your own home being pointed at. One evening, when the moon was bright and the road looked silver, Uche walked with Eze after they left the palm wine joint. Their footsteps made soft sounds on the dirt path. The air smelled of smoke and shea butter, and somewhere someone's baby cried, then was quiet. Uche cleared his throat. "Eze," he said, "you know I am your brother. If I don't tell you truth, who will tell you?" Eze looked at him sideways. "What truth?" Uche paused like a man acting careful. "This rule your wife gave you," he said. "The one about not calling her name after midnight." Eze's body stiffened a little. He stopped walking. "How do you know about that?" he asked. Uche smiled, small and smooth. "Ah, village has ears. And besides, you mentioned it one day when you were tipsy. You said your wife has rules like a priest." Eze's face tightened. "It is not for public talk," he said. Uche put a hand on Eze's shoulder. "I know," he murmured. "That is why I'm telling you privately. Eze, ask yourself, why would a woman put fear inside her husband? If she is clean, why all these rules?" Eze's stomach turned. He remembered Chidera's serious eyes, the way she spoke like someone warning a child away from a deep river. Eze pulled Uche's hand off his shoulder. "My wife is not putting fear," he said. "She is protecting our home." Uche clicked his tongue. "Protecting or controlling?" he asked softly. "Eze, you used to be a man. Now you behave like someone who is being guided by a rope." Eze's eyes flashed. "Eze," he warned. Uche raised his palms again. "Forgive me," he said, but his smile did not reach his eyes. "I just don't like seeing my brother trapped in a mystery. One day you will wake up and realize you married something you don't understand." Eze went home angry that night, not at Chidera, but at the feeling Uche had planted in him. He entered his hut and found Chidera grinding pepper, her braids falling forward as she leaned. She looked up and smiled. "You're back," she said. Her voice was soft, familiar, safe. Eze nodded, forcing his anger to swallow itself. He sat down, washed his hands, and ate the food she placed before him. But while he chewed, his mind kept chewing something else. Why did Uche's words feel like they had claws? Why did they keep scratching inside his head? Weeks passed. The village entered a season where the nights were longer and the wind at night felt colder. People began to sleep earlier. The elders said it was because spirits like to sit on crossroads during such nights. Chidera became even more careful with their home. Before sleeping, she would sprinkle a pinch of salt near the doorway and whisper words Eze did not understand. She didn't do it loudly. She didn't do it to show off. She did it like someone locking a door properly before going to bed. Eze watched her sometimes and felt a strange mixture of comfort and discomfort. Comfort because she was taking care, discomfort because she didn't know exactly what she was guarding against. Then came the day Chidera told him something that made Eze's heart soften again. It was morning and the sunlight was pale. Chidera sat outside on a low stool and held Eze's hand, guiding it to her belly. "Eze," she said, her voice quiet like a secret. "There is a child coming." For a moment, Eze forgot every doubt Uche had ever planted. He forgot every strange whisper. He forgot every rule. He just stared at his wife like a man who had been thirsty and suddenly saw water. His eyes grew wet, not with tears that fell, but with tears that gathered. "A child," he whispered. Chidera nodded, and this time she smiled fully. "Yes," she said, "a child." Eze laughed, and the laugh sounded like relief. He lifted his face to the sky, as if he wanted the sun itself to hear him. "Thank you," he whispered, not to anyone in the hut, but to the world, to God, to whatever good thing had remembered him. He took Chidera in his arms and promised her again, right there in the morning light, that he would protect her and their child, that he would keep their home safe, that no harm would touch them. Chidera held his face and looked into his eyes. "Then remember the rule," she said gently. The warmth returned to her voice, but the seriousness remained underneath like a drum beat you can't ignore, especially now. Eze nodded quickly. "I remember," he said. "I will never call your name after midnight." Chidera touched his cheek, satisfied, and went back inside to rest. But the village has a way of testing promises. A few nights later, there was a small gathering at the palm wine joint. Men were laughing, slapping backs, talking about who caught the fattest fish, who had the best harvest, who would be chosen for a small village duty. Eze sat with them for a while, enjoying the noise. Uche was there too, louder than usual. He drank and laughed and watched Eze the way a cat watches a rat hole. At some point, another man teased Eze. "Eze, since you married that your calm wife, you have become too obedient," the man said, and others laughed. "If she tells you not to breathe after midnight, you won't breathe again." Eze forced a smile. "Leave me," he said. "A man respecting his wife is not weakness." Uche leaned forward, eyes shining with mischief that wasn't pure. "Respect is good," he said, "but fear is not respect." He took a sip of wine and smacked. "Eze, let me ask you something. If you call her name after midnight, what will happen? Will thunder strike? Will your roof fall?" The men laughed again because they loved the sound of challenge. Eze felt heat rise into his face. "It is not a joke," he said. Uche's voice dropped lower, and his words slid like oil. "Or maybe," he murmured, "she just doesn't want you to know what she becomes when the night is deep. Maybe she becomes something else." Eze's stomach tightened. "Stop," he said sharply. Uche lifted his hands again, but this time his eyes carried a dare. "All right," he said, "I'm stopping. But if you are truly the man of your house, one day you will test it. Not for me, for yourself. Because a man who cannot call his wife's name in his own home, is he really married or is he being managed?" The men made sounds of agreement, not because they knew, but because they liked the feeling of power those words gave them. Eze left the palm wine joint with his head heavy. The moon followed him like a silent witness. The village was quiet. Cooking fires had gone out. Dogs slept. Somewhere, a cricket kept singing as if it didn't care about human fear. When he reached his hut, he found Chidera already asleep on the mat, her breathing slow and steady, her braids spread loosely around her head. The oil lamp was low. Eze sat down and watched her, and for a moment he felt ashamed. This woman trusted him enough to sleep peacefully, and he was allowing other men's laughter to disturb his heart. He lay down beside her and tried to sleep, but sleep did not come quickly. Eze's mind kept opening its eyes. He listened to the night, the small scratching of insects, the soft movement of wind against the wall, the distant hoot of an owl. He glanced at the oil lamp. The flame was almost dead. Time passed. At some point, the village became so quiet, it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. Then the night crossed into that place Chidera had warned him about. Midnight. Eze didn't know it by clock, but he knew it by feeling. The air shifted. The darkness felt thicker. Even the crickets paused for a moment, then continued, softer than before. Eze lay still. Chidera slept. His heart began to calm. Maybe he would wake tomorrow and laugh at himself for being so disturbed. Maybe Uche's words were just palm wine talk. Maybe... Then he heard it. A voice. Soft at first, like a thread. Familiar. Sweet. Eze. His body froze. The voice came again, closer this time, as if someone was standing outside the hut. Eze. Eze's mouth went dry. He turned his head slowly toward Chidera. She was still sleeping. Her lips did not move. Her chest rose and fell calmly. The voice came again, but now it sounded like it was inside the hut, near the doorway. Eze, come. Eze sat up. The oil lamp was almost out, casting weak shadows that jumped like nervous children on the wall. His heartbeat became loud in his ears. He remembered Chidera's warning, even if you hear my voice calling you first. The voice changed slightly, becoming more urgent, more emotional. Eze, please. Eze swallowed hard. Chidera? He whispered without thinking, then caught himself and shut his mouth quickly. He hadn't called her name loud. He had only said it softly, almost like breathing. But the night heard everything.
What have I done?
Then the voice came again, clearer than ever. And it did not come from one place. It came from two directions at the same time. From outside the hut, by the doorway, Eze, and from inside the hut, right beside him, in the darkness, Eze. Eze's blood turned cold. He snapped his head toward the mat. Chidera was still lying down, but she was not alone. In the dim light, Eze saw the outline of another woman's face. Same braids, same cheekbones, same shoulders, sitting up slowly in the darkness as if she had always been there. Eze's throat tightened until he could barely breathe, because in that moment, he understood the truth of the room. And the night, like a patient animal, waited to see which one he would call. Eze sat upright on the mat, his back stiff, his skin suddenly cold as if the night had poured water on him. The oil lamp was almost dead, its small flame bending weakly, like it wanted to hide, and the shadows in the hut grew taller, stretching across the mud walls as if they were listening too. The voice outside the hut called again, soft and sweet. Eze. And the voice inside the hut answered at the same time, Eze. And the two sounds were so identical that Eze's mind struggled to decide which direction to fear first. He turned his head slowly, his throat too tight to swallow, and he saw the woman sitting up beside him in the darkness. The braids, the cheekbones, the wrapper tied the same way, the calm face, the steady eyes. Everything looked like Chidera, and yet Chidera was still lying on the mat, breathing gently as if she had not heard anything. Eze blinked hard and rubbed his eyes quickly. Because sometimes when a man is half asleep, his eyes can create shadows out of fear. But when he opened his eyes again, the second Chidera was still there, sitting upright with a quiet patience, looking at him like someone waiting to be welcomed. His lips trembled. He wanted to speak, but he remembered the rule too late. Because the rule was not only about calling her name, it was about what follows after you open a door. He tried to force his voice steady. "Who are you?" he whispered, and his voice barely came out, as if even his voice was afraid to be heard.
The Chidera beside him smiled gently, the exact same smile Eze knew, the kind that used to calm him after hard days. "Eze," she said softly, "why are you shaking? It is me." At the same time, from outside the hut, the other voice answered, closer now, like someone standing by the doorway with a hand resting on the raffia door curtain. "Eze," the voice said, "do not listen to it. Light the lamp. Look at me well." Eze's heart jumped at that because the voice outside sounded strained, like someone speaking through fear. The Chidera beside him turned her head slightly toward the doorway, then turned back to Eze, still calm, still composed. "Don't you see?" she murmured. "That one wants you to break another rule." Eze's hands shook. I didn't call anybody," he tried to say, but he knew he had. He didn't say the name loud, but the night hears what the mouth thinks, and he had allowed the name to sit too close to his lips. He swallowed again and looked down at the mat. The Chidera he married should be here beside him, warm, alive, familiar, but now there were two, and the confusion was like a rope tightening around his chest. The voice outside the hut spoke again, urgent now. "Eze, open the door. Let me in. That one is not me." Eze shifted his body slowly, looking from the doorway to the woman beside him. The woman beside him reached out and touched his forearm lightly. Her fingers were warm. That warmth made Eze pause, because warmth is convincing. "Eze," she whispered, "I am here. I have always been here. That one is the thing that comes when people break rules. Don't you remember what I told you? Some things borrow voices." The voice outside responded, almost angry. "Eze, don't be foolish. It is the one sitting beside you that is borrowing my face. I am outside because it pushed me out." Eze's breath became uneven. He felt trapped between two rivers, both pulling him. The oil lamp hissed softly as its flame weakened further, and the darkness thickened like palm oil poured into soup. Eze whispered to himself, not prayer yet, but desperation. "God, help me." Then, the Chidera beside him leaned closer, her voice softer, sweeter, almost playful. "Eze, come close. Touch my face. You know me. Look at me. I am your wife." Eze's mind screamed that something was wrong, but his body, his human body, remembered the comfort of his wife's presence, and that memory tried to override fear. He stared at her eyes. They looked like Chidera's eyes, but they were too steady, too clean, as if they did not carry normal human fatigue. The voice outside the hut spoke again, quieter now, like someone trying not to cry. "Eze," it said, "please, please, don't choose wrong. I warned you. I warned you." The word warned struck Eze's spirit like a slap. Yes, Chidera had warned him, and now his own foolishness had brought him to a place where his love was being tested in the dark. He thought of the way Chidera had held his hand when she told him the rule. He thought of her serious eyes. He thought of her belly earlier that week when the quiet joy she said a child was coming. That memory made his chest ache. Eze tried to stand, but his legs felt weak. He moved toward the doorway, thinking, maybe I should open it and bring the other one in. Then I will see clearly. But the Chidera beside him grabbed his wrist firmly, stronger than he expected. "Don't," she said sharply, and for the first time, her voice carried a crack, a sharpness that felt out of place. "If you open that door, you invite it fully." The voice outside responded immediately. "Eze, you see? It is controlling you. That is not me." Eze froze.
The Chidera beside him softened her face quickly, as if she realized she had shown something. She smiled, gentle again. I am protecting you. I am protecting our child. That line shook Eze. Our child, he repeated softly. Yes, she said, nodding. Our child. Don't you want peace? The voice outside the hut sounded pained. Eze, it is lying. It cannot carry what I carry. It cannot carry life. Eze's mind spun. He looked at the doorway, and in the dim moonlight slipping through the cracks, he could see a faint outline outside, a figure standing still, like someone refusing to step away. He couldn't see the face clearly, but he could hear the voice, and that voice sounded like his wife's true voice when she prayed, the voice that carried weight. The Chidera beside him leaned closer again and whispered, Eze, call me. Eze's stomach dropped. What? Call me, she repeated softly. Say my name. If you say it, it will prove you know me. Eze's mouth went dry. He remembered the warning again. Never call my name after midnight. If he called the name now, he feared he would seal something. The voice outside the hut shouted suddenly, Don't do it. Eze, don't say my name. That is what it wants.
Eze pressed his palms against his head. He felt like the hut was shrinking. The darkness pressed. The two voices pressed. His own shame pressed. He wanted to scream for help. But what man screams for help in a village night when the elders already warned that darkness carries ears? He whispered, Please, just leave me, both of you. The Chidera beside him laughed softly, not loudly, but the laughter carried something that was not human. Both of us? She asked gently. Eze, you cannot send away your wife. The voice outside said, Eze, listen to me. Ask me what only your wife knows. Not a village question, not a public story, something between us. Eze's eyes widened. That made sense, because the face could be borrowed, the voice could be borrowed, but love had private language, love had small secrets, love had things that did not belong to the world. His mind rushed quickly through memories, then it landed on one, simple and sharp. The secret pet name. A name he never said outside, a name he only used when they were alone, when they were laughing, when she was annoyed and he wanted to soften her heart. Eze swallowed and turned to the woman beside him first, because she was closest. He looked into her eyes and asked, his voice trembling, When I call you by my private name for you, what do you always say back to me? The Chidera beside him blinked once slowly. Private name? She repeated, smiling as if amused. Eze, you call me many things. You call me my wife. You call me my love. Eze's stomach tightened. That was too general, too safe. The voice outside spoke immediately, firm now, like truth standing upright. You call me Nkem, she said, and Eze's heart jumped at the sound because only Chidera knew that name. And I always tell you, stop calling me that, you want to spoil me. Then you laugh and say, I will spoil you with love. The Chidera beside him stopped smiling. In that moment, the hut felt colder. Eze's whole body shook because the memory hit him with full force. Yes, that was exactly what happened. Chidera used to slap his chest lightly and say, stop it, pretending annoyance, but her eyes would be laughing. Eze turned slowly to the woman beside him. Her face was still Chidera's face, but something in her eyes had changed. The calm sweetness tightened into stillness, like a mask becoming heavy. The voice outside said, Eze, open the door. Let me in. Don't look at that one. Eze moved toward the doorway again, trembling, and this time, the Chidera beside him did not grab his wrist immediately. She just watched him, her eyes tracking his movement like a cat watching a rat. Eze pulled the raffia curtain aside. Chidera stood outside. Her wrapper was slightly loose, like someone who had been dragged. Her braids were messy. Her eyes looked wet, not with tears falling, but with tears held back. The moonlight touched her face and Eze saw the fear there, real fear, but also something else, hurt, deep hurt. Eze whispered, Chidera? Chidera stepped forward quickly and grabbed Eze's shoulders. Eze, she said, her voice shaking,
Don't call me. Don't call my name. The rule is already broken. Just listen to me. Don't answer it. Don't follow it. Don't. The voice behind Eze whispered softly, so close it felt like breath on his neck. Eze, you chose. Eze turned sharply. The Chidera in the hut was standing now. She stood upright, calm again, but her smile was gone. Her face looked smooth and empty, like a beautiful pot without water. She looked at Chidera outside, then looked at Eze, and her voice came out sweet again, like honey hiding poison. So, she said quietly, you remember. Chidera outside tightened Eze's grip. Don't speak to it, she whispered. Don't let it hear you more. Eze's throat burned. He looked at the fake one. Who are you again? He asked, but now his fear had anger inside it. The fake one smiled slowly. I am the one you invited. I am the one that answered when you called into darkness. I am the one that waits where names are dropped like coins. Chidera's eyes flashed. You cannot stay. The fake one tilted her head. I can because he opened the door. Eze felt dizzy. What do you want? The fake one answered calmly. To live. Chidera's voice became sharp. You live by stealing. The fake one shrugged slightly. That is how the hungry survive. You don't blame fire for burning wood. Eze felt Chidera tremble. He held her quickly. What do we do? Chidera's face turned toward him. Her voice softened, but her words were heavy. Eze, don't hesitate. Don't doubt, because doubt feeds it. You must choose me and hold me. If you look back again, it will pull me. Eze nodded quickly. He tightened his hold on Chidera, ready to drag her inside and shut the door. Then, the fake one spoke softly, like someone dropping a stone into water. Eze, which one of us is carrying your child? Chidera outside froze. Eze froze too, because the question hit like a slap. Chidera's pregnancy was not visible yet, but it was real. They had celebrated it quietly. They had whispered prayers. They had thanked God. The fake one smiled wider. If you choose wrong, she whispered, you won't just lose a wife, you will lose a future. Chidera's voice shook. Eze, don't listen. But fear had already entered Eze's mind, because when a man hears the word future, he becomes weak. He becomes protective. He becomes desperate. And desperate men make mistakes. Eze looked at Chidera outside, then looked at the fake one inside. The fake one's face remained calm, confident, as if she already knew how the story would go. Chidera outside looked human, messy, frightened, hot. And in that small space of hesitation, the night moved. The wind rose suddenly, pushing dust into the doorway. The oil lamp flickered and died completely, and darkness swallowed the hut for one heartbeat. In that heartbeat, Eze heard Chidera scream his name, not calling him, but crying his name like pain, and he felt his hands lose grip. When the moonlight returned through the cracks, Chidera outside was no longer in his arms. Eze staggered forward into the doorway, breathing hard, his eyes wild. Chidera, he shouted without thinking, and the moment the name left his mouth, the night seemed to inhale. From inside the hut, the fake one answered gently. Yes, my husband. Eze's blood turned to ice, because the voice did not come from outside again. It came from inside. And outside the hut, by the doorway, there was only silence, the kind of silence that tells you something has been taken. Eze stepped out, looking around the yard. Moonlight fell on the dirt. The trees stood still. Crickets sang like nothing happened, but Chidera was gone. Eze turned back slowly. The woman inside the hut sat down calmly on the mat like she belonged there. She adjusted her wrapper. She looked at Eze with Chidera's face and spoke softly as if she was consoling him. You see, she murmured, you chose. Eze's mouth shook. Where is she? The fake one smiled faintly. Where names go when they are called into darkness. Eze fell to his knees. Because in that moment, he understood something deeper than fear. He didn't just break a rule, he traded his wife for a voice. And the worst part was the thing wearing Chidera's face did not look like a monster. It looked like a calm wife settling into her home, like someone ready to continue life as if nothing had happened. Come and sleep, the fake Chidera said gently. Tomorrow is another day. Eze stared at her with hatred. But hatred is not power when you don't know what you are fighting. Outside, the night continued like it did not care. And somewhere beyond the village, somewhere in the bush where the road turned dark, something that had Chidera's voice and Chidera's fear was being carried away into a place Eze had never seen. Morning came the way it always came in the village, slowly, with pale light spreading across rooftops and smoke rising from cooking fires, with women sweeping their compounds and children chasing one another barefoot on the red earth. But inside Eze's hut, morning did not feel like morning. Eze did not sleep. He sat on the mat all night, staring at the doorway like a man waiting for a thief to return what he stole. And the woman inside Eze's hut moved like Chidera, spoke like Chidera, breathed like Chidera. But she was not Chidera, and Eze knew it with the kind of knowing that does not need proof. When the sun finally showed itself, the fake one stood up, stretched lightly, as if she had slept well, and began to do the normal things Chidera used to do, as if a home could be robbed and still pretend nothing was missing. She swept the floor slowly, humming softly, and the song sounded like Chidera's voice, but the rhythm was wrong, the way a familiar drum can still sound strange when a stranger beats it. She went outside to fetch water, and the neighbors greeted her, and she greeted back with calm respect, because she knew that a face can open doors easily in a village. Eze followed her with his eyes, and he saw how people smiled at her, how they called her name, how she answered with that same gentle tone, and he felt anger rise in his chest until it burned, because he wanted to shout and say, "That is not my wife." But how do you convince a village that what looks like Chidera is not Chidera, when even your own eyes struggled last night? When she returned with water, she looked at him and smiled like a patient wife. "Eze," she said softly, "you did not sleep. You will fall sick." Eze's mouth tightened. "Don't call my name like you know me," he said, his voice rough. The fake Chidera tilted her head slightly. "But I do know you," she replied. "I know you more than she does now because you chose me." Eze stood up sharply, his body shaking with rage. "Where is she?" The fake one's face did not change. "Where you sent her," she answered calmly. "You called, you doubted. You hesitated. The night took the one you were not holding." Eze's fist clenched. "Bring her back," he said through his teeth. The fake one sighed lightly, as if he was asking for something silly. "You don't command the night," she said. "You only feed it." Eze tried to leave the hut, to go and search the bush path, to run to the stream, to call elders, to do anything. But the fake one followed him like a shadow, always near, always calm, always looking like the wife he was supposed to be protecting. When Eze stepped outside, people greeted him too and asked him why he looked like a man who had seen a ghost. Eze forced a smile and nodded, because in the village, if you speak too quickly about strange things, people either laugh at you or fear you, and fear spreads fast. He told himself he would wait, he would watch, he would find a crack in the lie, because a lie can wear a good dress, but it cannot wear it forever without tearing. That same evening, Uche came to visit. Uche entered the compound with his usual loud confidence, laughing